Hello, I'm Lee Workman. This is part 2 of the walk around video for the YB powered Mk1 Escort. Here she is. I'm just at the end of the dry build stage now. So I've done all the work, all the fabrication's done, all the holes are drilled, built it all up as a complete car, built all the wiring loom, tested all the electrics, and now it's all complete, it's ready to tear down. I'll start taking it apart, take the engine out, take all the trim out, strip it right back down to a bare shell. It's then going on a spit. I can flip it upside down, I can finish off some of the fabrication and welding underneath the car, seam seal all the joints, and then the car will be off for paint. I'll send it off for paint. While it's off for paint, I'll rebuild the engine, and when it comes back I can get the car trimmed up, reinstall the engine, and we should be on the road. Fingers crossed. So let's take a closer look at the car. So here she is, my 1974 Mk1 Escort 1300L. Originally left-hand drive, imported from Portugal. It's undergone quite a big transformation on the bodywork. Mainly thanks to the guys at SD Developments up in Todmorden. They took the shell after it had been dipped, stripped off all the rust, all the underseal, all the years of Portuguese mud, delivered to them as a clean, bare, fresh shell. They immediately cut all the rust out, did all the body restoration first, before then going on to a lot of the Group 4 rally type modifications and reinforcements on the shell. At the front, it's had a replacement front panel with the rally style front panel with the holes in, gives me more air to the intercooler. Some AVO RS type quarter bumpers, and the front panel I modified to accept the Lucas combined indicator and side lamp assemblies. The original grille polished up, given a coat of paint, it come out quite well. The headlamps are Lucas H4 replacements. One of the first questions most people ask me is about the wheels and tyres. What are they? Okay, so they're Revolution, classic 8-spoke style, obviously a mini-light copy. They're cast aluminium, they're 15 inches in diameter, 9 inches wide all round. The fronts have a -12 offset, and the rears have a ET -24 offset to fill out the bubble arches. I'm running the same tyres all round. They're Avon ZZS's, and they're 245 40 15 tyres. Plenty of clearance front and rear. Been some modifications, obviously, as I mentioned in the first video. The arch shapes have been reprofiled, tubbed at the back, tubbed at the front. The wings and the rear quarter panels are all replacements by Magnum panels with the built-in forest arches, bubble arches as many people call them. The door on this side was absolutely knackered, past saving. I thought, fortunately, I found an absolutely mint door up in Liverpool. Took an hour-and-a-half drive up there to get it. It was immaculate, there was no rot on it at all. Brought it home all excited, tried it on the car, only to discover it was off a van. The hinges are completely different. On a normal saloon you've got a male hinge at the top and a female at the bottom, and on a van you've got a male. So SD Developments rescued the door for me by cutting the hinges off the old door, which was fortunately still good, and welding them onto the van door. The outer profile is exactly the same. The inner skin is different, where you bolt on the window regulator and the interior latch mechanism. So again, that was cut out of the old original door and welded into this one. You notice I use sill stands. If you looked at my albums, they're excellent for working on the car. The sill stands are 20mm pins that are inserted into reinforcement plates on the sill, and they tie in with the roll cage. If I just pop the door open, I'll show you. So down to the reinforcement box on the safety devices cage. The sill stand receiving holes are tied in to the cage front and back. It makes it very, very stiff. I can jack the car up and take one of the stands out and it stays exactly where it is. There's no flex. The C-pillars have been modified to accept fuel filler necks, as in the works cars when Gartrack did them for the Borum guys. They're two 120mm fuel bowls that were turned out of steel and inserted into the C-pillar. These house a 2.5-inch aluminium Monza cap on a Mk1 flange, and inside I can fit this vented locking cap for security. There's one both sides. The filler necks I fabricated myself out some 2-inch boost pipe that I got off eBay. My mate Paul welded them all together. It was pretty tricky to get them from the C-pillar down to the rear parcel shelf into the rear load space and the fuel tank. I tried to make as neat a job as I could. My mate Wayne turned up these machined rings on the inside, which have got captive threads in for the flange to bolt to the C-post panel. They go through these boxes with a seal on to prevent any fumes coming up from the inside of the cart. If I take you into the boot, you can see there's a 90-degree fuel filler hose from Gates that connects two stubs on either side of the fuel tank. Up to the fuel filler necks. The tank itself, I made a cardboard pattern to get the exact shape and fittings that I wanted. Took it to Radtech, the same guys who manufactured the radiator and the intercooler for me, and they manufactured the fuel tank. It's a 12-gallon centrally mounted tank. It incorporates a video dip tube sender, so I can accurate fuel gauge in the car instead of relying on a sight tube on the outside of the car. There are a couple of rollover vented valves mounted at the top, which vent any gases down to atmosphere through the boot floor. The tank's got a swirl pot built in, so the return from the fuel injection system comes back into the tank, into a swirl pot, and then the swirl pot exits into an AN8 fitting. Down there, so in the old spare wheel well, I was never going to fit a spare wheel in there because of the new big 15-inch tubs. So instead of being a wasted space, I mounted a Bosch 044 fuel injection pump and a Bosch filter in there. It's all rubber mounted to prevent any vibration and unwanted noise. I fabricated a shelf in steel all the way around. It's 1.5mm steel, reinforced with some bends and some triangulation just to keep the strength up, but low weight. You'll notice there's nothing touching the outer skin of the quarter panel at all. It's supported on 3 sides, and on there I've got a shelf, a couple of luggage hooks. I can mount my toolbox in there. Another 15x9 Revolution spare wheel is mounted centrally. And the boot floor was modified So normally the boot floor comes up in one panel and curves up towards the back, making the spare wheel sit at an angle. So we Frenched in a panel that's sectioned lower, allows the spare wheel, full size 15-inch spare with a full size tyre, to sit nice and flat and comfortably between the back panel and the fuel tank. I've mounted a jack. It's a Bilstein jack, originally out of a Mercedes. It's got a 20mm pin, which is perfect for my sill stand holes already in the sills. It's just secured with a couple of knobs and some brackets that are fabricated. It's nice and solid. It's not going to vibrate, go anywhere. Keeps it tucked out of the way. Similarly, I had to have a centrally mounted fuel tank, because where the fuel tank used to sit on the driver's side, or what is now the driver's side after I converted it to right-hand drive, the big 15-inch tubs would take up too much space and I can't get a standard fuel tank in there. So fuel tank moved to the middle of the car, above the axle, keep all the weight over the axle. And then I fabricated some brackets in the fuel tank well to mount a battery. Obviously on the inner wing, the original hole for the fuel filler has been welded shut. Another modification I had to do here was, there's a bit of a cock up on my part, I have to admit. When I made the fuel tank, or designed the fuel tank, I tried to use maximum use of the space, but I forgot about the boot spring rods. So the boot spring rods come up through here and go across the boot. The two torsion springs, with the fuel tank in the way, the boot torsion springs don't fit. So I had to design another way of keeping the boot lid up, and I used some gas struts. Mounted one on each hinge, over here and over here. Two little struts, nice and neat, out of the way, and they support the weight of the boot perfectly until it's about halfway down, and then she shuts. Back of the car needed a new back panel. That was knackered, the boot floor was fine. So the stainless bumper, early type bumper without the number plate cut out, and I've tucked in a tiny little LED number plate lamp, which is enough to get it through a mott. Not that it needs one, but it satisfies the law. Reversing lamp holes were welded up. Didn't use them. It did come with the twin reversing lamps. Being the luxurious L model, I decided to sack them off and fitted the old school style Lucas spot lamp or fog lamp as a reversing lamp. So I had new badges sourced from Australia. Cosworth badge sourced from Retro Ford, sort of fits in with the theme old school style. So here's a better look at the low space area, some of the gubbins removed, with a fuel pump tray refitted. You can see I've got a space for my toolbox strapped in. The spare wheel is secured with a Vauxhall Vector spare wheel securing clamp, just coarse thread. Conical nut secures the spare wheel. You get a better view of the boot floor. I've made a new panel, swaged it for strength, kept it flat, sectioned the curved bit. We get a full width 15-inch rim in there. The battery is supported on some brackets that are fabricated. They incorporate some captive nuts to secure the battery tray. The battery's at the back, obviously, so it makes sense to put some relays back here that control the high load items for the reversing lamp, the heated rear window and the fuel pump, to save any chances of voltage drop or fat cables all the way back again from the front of the car. So I just take a take off here from the battery and feed them directly from the battery via relays. So the high current cables have got the shortest run possible, which makes it safe as well as cutting down on voltage drop. The front to rear battery cable is a big 50 amp cable. Again, it negates any possibility of any voltage drop from front to back. Make sure everything the ECU and the rest of the car gets the full fat 12 volts. A couple of simple brackets that are made to secure the Bilstein jack out of a 1980s model Mercedes. Just locates on a couple of pegs, secured with a couple of threaded knobs. And just a simple clamp fabricated at the other end. Nice and quick and easy, no special tools needed, and the jack's solidly secured, tucked out of the way in the boot of the car. Come over to this side of the car. Again, got the fuel filler mounted in the seat post. Both of them feed the same tank. Front and rear wing and rear quarter panel with the built-in bubble arches from Magnum. The door is the original door, but I reskinned it because some holes at the bottom. I chose to reskin it with a early '69 skin, so it doesn't have the door lock. I won't be running door locks on this car. Instead, I've fitted central locking. There you go, helps if you press the right button. And we'll go inside and have a look at the interior trim. Due to the mods to the floor for the 4-link boxes and the raised prop shaft tunnel and the enlarged diff tunnel for the Atlas axle, the standard seat won't fit on the floor pan. Again, the 15-inch tubs intrude quite a lot, and the turrets also for the rear coilover dampers. So all that means is the original seats won't fit, never fit. Can't even chop them up to fit because they're all tubular and pressed steel. Instead, I've opted to make my own base and backboards out of some 1/2-inch marine ply, shaped them to fit, made the appropriate brackets so it's all nice and secure. I'll then get these foamed up by an upholsterer, and when the car goes for paint, I'll get all the trim done to match. I'll try and get them to match the original seats style as closely as possible. Same with the rear quarter cards. I made them myself out of some 4mm hardboard. Speakers are secured on the inside with the MDF panels, so it's only the grille that clips on to the trim, stop the trim from sagging. The roll cage is a Safety Devices multi-point cage, weld in, fitted by the guys at SD Developments when they restored the shell. I've got a roll cage mounted interior light, works off the door or manually off a button, chucks out an awful lot of light. The reason is because the original light mounted in the bulkhead at the front won't fit, or it will fit, but it won't throw any light out because of the upper roll cage. The roll cage features a dash bar and also triangulates up to the front turrets inside the wings. The seats are of a 90 spec Escort RS Turbo. They're really comfy, they're really supportive. I like the blocky headrest style. I don't really think the fishnet style of Recaro suits a Mk1 Escort. but once these are retrimmed, they can be made to look really period. I'll get in and I'll show you some stuff on the inside. Steering wheels are suede covered 350mm aftermarket job with a slight dish. It's got a quick release mounting. I'll just get that out of the way so we can see the dash. It's an aftermarket dash top, fiberglass dash top, which has been flocked. I need to modify it slightly because I've chosen to use these heated grills out of a Mondeo. So I'll reprofile this area so they fit in nice and secure. Their clocks are digital gauges from Speed Hut in the States. We have a 0 to 160 mile/hour digital speedo, which is driven off a sensor on the Cosworth gearbox. 8,000 RPM tacho, which is driven by the ECU. It's got programmable shift lights. And the fourth gauge, replacing the 4 little multi gauges, features a voltmeter and water temp. And it also features fuel level from the sender in the tank, and also fuel pressure from the regulator under the bonnet. Mounted in a Mark II ashtray panel are 4 gauges for turbo boost, tick-tock clock, and then I've got oil pressure and oil temperature. I'm using a Mark II shroud and Mark II switchgear, primarily because I did a power steering conversion. I used the motor from a Corsa B, Vauxhall Corsa B, electronic power steering motor, which powers the column. Because of the dash bar, using the Mark 1 column, it puts the switch down here and it clashed with the dash bar. So I modified cut down a Mark 2 Escort upper column, which brought the ignition switch closer toward me, the right side of the dash bar, and then I used the upper and lower cowl from a Mark 2 Escort. It made sense then to use Mark 2 Escort switchgear, which saves me having a load of switches all across the dash, and they're expensive and hard to get. I made my own centre console out of a bit of plywood, fitted a retro looking stereo in there. If I key on, we can look at the pretty lights. Down here in the centre console, there's the fag lighter, USB charging point, just for practical uses really. This is my fogs on a toggle on-off switch. When the high beam's on, this will be the spotlight switch. I've got a 3-position switch in the centre for my heater control, so off, speed 1, speed 2. Over here are momentary switches controlled by a relay, and they're timed. So this is the heated front screen, and that will stay on. I can set the time. Just for the circuit testing, I popped a couple of bulbs in. That's my heated screen on, and then if I toggle the switch, it can come off, and then the heated rear screen, again on a timed relay. Toggle that on, look over my shoulder and see the bulb in the corner, just to tell me the circuit's working. Over on the passenger side of the car, the door trim panel is a off-the-shelf unit. It needs to be trimmed up. I bought a bare one just so I could get it trimmed up with the rest of the interior trim when the car comes back from paint. I restored the opening quarter lights. It turned out to be an absolute mission, but it's now completed. The door mirrors are Tex items, British made, stainless steel. They suit the car nicely. I've filled in the triangulation of the roll cage with some more hardboard, which will be trimmed up. I had to create my own parcel shelf, and you can see above the shelf is the fuse box and relays. The original Escort Mark 1 only had one relay and 6 fuses, so all the current went through the switches, which is why the switches didn't last very long and you had countless electrical problems. Hopefully this will be a bit more reliable. Every single circuit is fused. All the high current circuits are controlled by relays, and we've got master fuses as well. Electrical cutout switch, if we can poke it up there, you can see that there's a dual servo which feeds the Gartrack bias brake pedal box. So I've got servo assisted brakes front and rear. Underneath the panel, this little kick panel, there's a OBD2 port, a diagnostic port for the Link ECU, which is hidden behind this panel, and the plate that covers all the fuel lines and vacuum hoses which go through the bulkhead into the engine bay. Let's pop back over to the driver's side. A bit of a close-up view of the Corsa B power steering. All the details of the power steering conversion and everything else I've done on the car are available in my albums, in the Facebook link below, just coming across the screen now. If you go to that page, click on the albums, and you can see all the fabrication and all the work that I've done in there with much more detail in the text, telling you what I did and how I did it. Where I needed drawings, I've got drawings for you. So Gartrack bias brake pedal box, custom made throttle pedal. The inner wheel wells have been tubbed to suit the 15-inch wheel, so I've got plenty of lock. Over on this side there's a little port to pop the bonnet, and let's do that. Let's get to the interesting bit and see what's under the bonnet. So here we are under the bonnet. The bonnet is, it's not the original panel. I had to source another panel. The original had a little skimmer filler on the top, and because I wanted the louvers punched in, you can't punch louvers into filler. They're 10 5-inch by 1/2-inch louvers either side, squeezed in between the bonnet support rails. And they help extract a bit of the hot air from under the engine bay, which is going to be generated by this. It's a Sierra Cosworth YB motor. It's a 200 block out of the Sapphire 4x4 and the Escort Cosworth. Actually, this isn't a 200 block, this is a Cortina blocking for mock-up. There's the original block there. It's going to need a bit of love. It's going to need a rebore and a crank grind, and yeah, it wasn't as healthy as I was told it was when I bought it, but you know, there you go, shit happens. In order to mock the engine up in the car so I could work out where I was going to put the gearbox and the engine mounts and all the other gubbins, I just used a bare Cortina block, just an old 1600 block, no crank, no rods. I could then place it on the mounts. I could bolt the T5 gearbox to it out of a 2-wheel drive Sierra Cosworth 5-speed Borg Warner box. That would tell me then when I could put the gear lever hole and the engine mounts and the gearbox mounts, etc. So once the block was in and I plopped the Sierra Cosworth sump on, I could see where my rack clearance was. It's mounted on a World Cup cross member with the softer mounts from Retro Power, so it doesn't vibrate all my fillings out my head. It gives enough clearance. It's a standard rack position crossmember, but it gives me enough clearance for the rack against the Sierra Cosworth 2-wheel drive sump. Panel wise, it's the original upper and lower bulkheads on the car. The lower bulkhead has been double skinned with a single skinner 2mm sheet steel instead of the normal 3-piece skin pack. I didn't want them big ugly seams running vertically down the front of the bulkhead, so I had SD Developments fabricate me one out of a single sheet. There are the 4 gussets in each corner to add a bit of rigidity to the shell, plus the AVO strut top mounts and the Group 4 type strut brace. Down the front, it's the original slam panel from the car. The right hand inner wing is the original. The left hand inner wing was rotten and had to be replaced with a new panel from Magnum. The radiator support panels had to be relieved quite a lot in order to get the intercooler in. The intercooler sits in front of the radiator and it's just slightly shorter than an RS 500 sized intercooler, but that allows me to keep my original bonnet latch and avoid bonnet pins. I was quite keen to avoid bonnet pins. The radiator is an oversized 50mm core with a custom made header tank to make it like a twin cam styling, so it looks a bit more at home under the bonnet. The head's a 2-wheel drive head. Stock cams at the moment. It's been converted to coil on plug ignition using Denso coils. On the inlet side, there's the inlet manifold off the small turbo Escort Cosworth, the last of the line. Seen by many as quite an upgrade over the standard unit. It's got a much larger throttle body. It's running Bosch 1000cc injectors. I've homemade the loom myself. It's got a Bailey catch tank on the inlet side, which takes the crankcase gases out of the block breather down on the left hand side of the block, and also from the back of the cam cover I had a special fitting welded in before I powder coated it, skimmed it, polished the top by hand. On the exhaust side, it's a Garrett T34 turbo with a 0.63 exhaust housing, billet compressor wheel, full 360-degree roller bearing conversion in the centre cartridge. Pretty trick, old school turbo, not like the modern ones, but pretty trick. And it's running a Turbo Smart uprated wastegate and exhausts via a 3-inch diameter stainless pipe. That lot sits on top of a 4x4 manifold, a bit more compact than the earlier 2-wheel drive manifold, gives me a lot more clearance. Under here you can also see the roller bearing top mounts. They're the taper roller type, not the rose jointed ones. They're a bit more forgiving for the road, and they're rubber mounted. The clutch and front and rear brake master cylinder reservoirs are mounted on a fabricated panel on the bulkhead. I made the bracket, designed the bracket myself. So it's got the reservoir clamps and an integrated drip tray. Made that out of aluminium and had it anodised black. And then over on the passenger side to match it, I designed up a aluminium screen wash tank. One of my pals fabricated it and welded it from aluminium. We pinched the filler cap and stud off one of the brake clutch reservoirs, the same type of pot, so it all matched. And the pump runs straight into the upper bulkhead. The washer jets are mounted in the windscreen grille directly in there. They're twin jets on each side. Gives me a bit more of for a better spray pattern on the windscreen, and all the pipes are hidden on the inside for a nice neat look. Back on the inlet side for a bit, the dash 6 steel braided hose comes from the fuel tank via the fuel pump up through the bulkhead into a billet rail, billet fuel injection rail, which are then Bosch injectors, back out into some more AN6, down to a Turbo Smart fuel pressure regulator, and then back for the return to the swirl pot in the tank. On the inlet side there's a Ground Good Racing dump valve, vacuum operated off the inlet plenum, and I also chose to mount the air intake temperature sensor on the cold side of the intercooler instead of on the plenum, where it can suffer from heat soak and give you some spurious readings. Another modification I made was to the standard 2-wheel drive thermostat housing. I welded a boss in there so it can accept a radiator fan switch, so the fan switch is constantly in the coolant. It gives me a more accurate reading of the coolant temperature, and therefore more control over when I can switch the fans on and off. They'll also be switched on and off via the Link ECU. The turbo is still water cooled as it was in the original installation. I know a lot of people get rid of it, but I chose to keep it. The inlet side is fed off the thermostat housing as on a normal 2-wheel drive Sierra Cosworth into one side of the bearing cartridge, then out the other side of the turbo, and it returns back into the header tank via another AN6 fitting. I think that pretty much covers under the bonnet and the engine bay. So that about wraps it up here at the end. Oh, while I've got you, if anybody out there in YouTube land has got the stainless trim, original Mark 1, not the reproduction stuff, if you've got a pair of them and in mint condition and they have to be mint, then let me know. Or if you know somebody who's got some, for sure, don't just give me random places off the internet. If you know someone who's got some, or you've got some yourself, please get in touch, because that's the only thing really I'm missing. So, what colour am I going to paint it? I keep on changing my mind. First of all, I wanted really dark green on the Lotus Carlton. Do you remember the Lotus Carlton? It was a really dark, almost black green called Imperial Green. So I thought, yeah, Imperial Green with some gold stripes and the gold wheels. That'll look the bollocks. Went to a classic car show, saw a Mk1 Escort painted in almost the same colours, hated it. Walked away really disappointed because it hung me out on that colour. So I don't know. I know I want a metallic colour because the Mk1 shell, especially with the bubble arches, it's a really swoopy car, and the metallics will show off the highlights of the car. I don't want like a Fast and Furious replica, blue with white stripes. There's about 1 million of them out there. I really like lime green, Le Mans green. My first Mk1 Escort was Le Mans green. My really good friend Paul has got a Le Mans green Mark 1. There's a lot of them out there, so I'm probably looking for something a bit different. I'm open to your ideas. At the moment, I'm thinking I want it like a dark silver with like a black Mexico stripe. I'm not going to have the Mexico logo. The car's not a Mexico. I don't want it to be a Mexico replica with the 1300L with a Cosworth engine in it. So I'll probably just delete the Mexico writing and just have a continuous black stripe. But I like the Mexico stripe on these cars with the bubbles, because where it flares over the arches, it makes the arches look fatter. I think it suits it better than an RS2000 stripe going along the waist of the car, and then it suddenly stops at the bubble arch and carries on. But looks a bit odd sometimes. Depends on the colour, I appreciate that. So yeah, probably a dark silver with like either a black or a charcoal stripe, and then a black roof. Just cut it off there. That's what I'm thinking. I think that would look good with gold wheels for the rest of the car. You might have some ideas. I'm open to anything. There's probably a good few months left yet before I have to pick the colour choice. So if you've got any ideas, let me know in the comments. I'd be interested to see them. I'd be interested to see your cars. Post pictures up in the comments. It's good to share ideas. As I said before, if you've got any questions that probably could be answered in my photo albums, please head over to my photo albums. There's lots of detailed pics of all the different aspects of the car that I've done, from installing the turbo and the intercooler, the radiator from Radtech, mounting the gearbox, making my own interior trim, mounting the seat belts, doing the wiring harness, fitting the pedal box and having to make my own pedal for that, and the power steering conversion is probably like a really popular one. That album seems to go down really well. The full conversion's in there. Head over there, flick through the albums. Look, each picture's annotated with what I did, how I did it. Help yourself. And until I start tearing it down, that's probably it for a while. I'll when it's on spit and I'm doing some work on the spit, I'll pop another video up. But until then, thanks for watching. Give us a like. Please share the video with your muckers if you and different groups if you think it's worthy. And thanks for watching.